Ourselves.
We're live again. Hopefully, still people are. No one's watching yet. Hopefully, people will jump back in on this. Yeah, people are starting to come back in.
Whoa,
If somebody,
where am I?
if somebody who's now watching, I think everybody's coming back in right now. I was looking at Greg,
And I was looking at Keith.
and we did not see where the broadcast dropped.
Yeah, at what point? What were we discussing?
Can someone give us a line so that we know exactly where to pick up in the conversation? Because we were engrossed in
Tell us
conversation.
where we were. We were talking about style. I mean, we can go back to that again. Keith mentioned the fact that he used the term maintaining a Hildebrandt voice
look and voice
through
yes.
all the different styles and periods of art that I've illustrated, and I never thought in those terms. A voice, I approached it job by job, and took the job on and styled it in a manner that I thought was appropriate for the job. Whether it be a more simplified children's book approach, which is more cartoony, for the lack of another term, cuter, and then to a more fully painted look. But when I got the Unicorn Publishing books, there I never thought in those terms at all. I was just thinking in terms of I'm painting pictures.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, and I kind of like got into sort of a conversation of, I think a lot of books, illustrated books, talk down to kids visually. It's almost like
I agree with you. Yeah.
It's like the mentality, well, they're kids, so therefore we should approach it as though they're kids' drawings. Kids aren't trying to draw like kids.
Yeah, no.
Kids are trying to draw.
Yes, and in your imagination, when you're a kid, the thing you're drawing looks real to you.
Yeah. So, but you're not trying to draw like a kid.
Yeah.
I never tried to draw like a kid. I was trying to draw like what I was looking at, either animation or the Detroit Art Museum or the comics, or I was trying to get that,
Yep.
Thus the frustration all those years as a kid, trying to achieve that.
Yep.
But I was never trying to draw. And I thought, later, especially when we would go over to one publisher and they were doing these books stripped down and very simplified and and I'm not knocking the style. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. It's just that, Tim and I presented another more detailed approach, and they said, well, this looks like it looks outdated. So they're not only are they think they're talking to kids in a kid's language of stripped down art, that was also imposed on that, or underneath that was these particular art directors' obsession with abstraction or simplification coming out of the 1950s. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, yeah.
Where realism was debunked.
Yeah.
Realism was really totally, not that's not hip. That's not the latest thing. That's old-fashioned. And if you drew rounded 3D cartoon characters, I think we talked about this before. You used to get the insult of, what are you trying to do? Make a Mickey Mouse? Because Mickey Mouse moved in 3D animation as opposed to flat 2D animation of TV animation of the 50s, But, and so, in other words, it's a long wrap of, I wasn't thinking of illustrating children's books when I did the unicorn stuff. I was illustrating books, telling a story.
And those books hold up over time because of that.
I hope so. Yeah.
You look at those illustrations, and there's still the same punch and wow factor. It's not like, oh, this was clearly done in,
a particular, time frame or style.
Trend.
Trend.
Not done in a particular trend.
I mean, no. At that time, I really got into. I'd explored. Tim and I both were jumping around with styles. I think you do that when you're young. Maybe you're in well, you should. You should. Emulate all kinds of people that you admire, and then you finally that all settles down and it boils away and cooks in the stew pot, and becomes you. You just do your thing, and I finally got when I was doing the unicorn books, I just kept thinking, well, I'm not even after a style. I'm not style's out of the picture. That's not a word I'm using. I'm painting pictures. I'm just going to sit down and paint, and whatever comes out comes out, good, bad, or indifferent.
Well, and what may have been said when we were dropped or not, I'm not sure, but was the lighting scenarios and and typically your unifying shadow color of the dioxazine purple, which came about in Urshrak, which gives the paintings an overall visual look.
Mm-hmm.
But so we hit comic books and all that stuff last week. So the next biggest jump in your career came in 2000, I believe it was, early.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning of 2000.
Yeah.
When you decided you want to make the jump into pinup.
Right.
Um,
and I said to Gene, I want to do pinups. I just kind of I've been thinking about it for a while. That's something I had never done. And I grew up on that stuff. Like whoever mentioned Gil Hildebrandt, I mean, those are the calendars that I remember my grandfather had, and other people in the family, other men, had these calendars either in the basement or out in the garage. And I used to, be obviously impressed by them, even as a little kid, and the painting and the drawing. And so in 1999, I said to Gene, I want to do pinups. And so we talked. He said, "What kind? What are we talking about?" I said, "Well, I don't want to do, fantasy pinups. Like there were people doing them very well.
Like Boris
and Rowena, and incredible stuff. Frazetta, and I did want to do that. And so Gene suggested, well, how about more like something noir-ish, film noir, the 40s, that kind of. I said, yeah. So then she said, well, what are we talking about? I'm not sure because there's a 14-year difference between us. She's 14 years younger than me. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, she said, well, do one. So I did one. It was called Emerald Evening.
Yep.
It's like a dancer at a men's party. Like, I was thinking of it as sort of like a mafia get together.
Yeah.
and with this dancer up on the table, a stripper, and pretty basic. And I kind of looked at it as tongue in cheek. I think pinup for me is at least 50% satire. It's a satirical idiom.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you're kind of like putting things on.
Yeah.
It's like you're exaggerating and putting it on. You're almost like that's the point of the picture in a way.
Yeah, and a lot of your. I want to make sure I speak correctly. So if I say something wrong, correct me. But I know a lot of the early ones definitely had the noir type feel and felt like some of those pulp covers, like detective stories and things like that, really had that vibe to them. But that's actually when I first met you. Mm-hmm. I'd maybe met you briefly one other time for a few minutes, but when you walked in with the Emerald Evening painting, that's when I remember the excitement and the buzz around you that you felt when you carried it in to scan. And this, that was a while ago. So my memory, I feel like your friend Mark Romanowski may have come to the house with you from the studio that
Probably.
day. And even like the buzz was just rippling through all of you guys. They knew that you had made something special.
In a new direction.
Yeah. And Gene came down and loved the painting. But at that time, this is coming from conversations with Gene that I've had. She said, she had no idea. She didn't really know about pinup at the time. Mm-hmm. She didn't know if she could make it successful or not.
Right. It was a whole new area to explore and find out about. Yeah.
And so she dug in but said it really kind of took her about a year. If I'm speaking incorrectly back there, Gene, please let me know.
Can you hear? Huh?
She's busy. She can't hear.
We're talking about you and pinups when I first brought the painting home, and you...
We have to consult with the expert back there.
And you were unaware of what to do, or you weren't sure of how to approach, selling pinup art.
I said it would take me 5 years.
She just said it'll take her 5 years. to get this off the
And
ground.
did it take you 5 years or one?
No, I said it would take me 5 years before we learned worldwide this. And that's what it took me 5 years.
It took 5 years.
Around the world.
She said
Okay.
it would take me 5 years to get you world known for this, and that's what it took her, and she did it. But she did it, and she did it extremely well, as opposed to the gallery that first gave me a show, which I don't want to really knock, I mean, because he's quite a reputation. But nonetheless, he gave me my first show in New York, so that I'm really grateful for, of my pinup art. But he did not really sell anything at all, not one painting,
Yeah.
and did not begin to promote me around the world, and that was all Jean's doing. And she worked endlessly at it and succeeded, and had a lot to buck. I mean, because again, we talked about this before. People need for some, not all people, but many people need to categorize, especially with artists, and well, anybody, right? Are you this? Are you that? Are you conservative? Are you liberal? Are you blah 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 blah, and so people had known me as a fantasy artist.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings. Oh my God, what's he doing here? So you had to fight that kind of mentality of people's, thinking that I should be sticking with hobbits and not be doing this. But nonetheless, she pulled it. She did it. She spent 5 years and she succeeded.
So yeah, I'm going to focus on this aspect a little bit, because that's one of the things we talked about was, navigating changing genres to have a,
Mhm.
satisfying and successful career. So, and up until this point, you kind of transitioned seamlessly through these. You were invited in. You had people that were excited about you coming into comic books,
Mhm.
or doing children's books, like taking portfolios into do Tolkien. Star Wars found you from your name, from your Tolkien. So
Yep.
everything was kind of just flowing and grooving at that time. But this was a very direct stop-start
Mhm.
kind of thing.
Yep.
Where, you wanted to do it. You had to convince Gene of it being worthwhile. Now, what I would say about, Gene obviously supports you,
Yeah.
to no end, but she's also the kind of person that if she sees something that she truly doesn't think is going to work, she will tell you that it's not going
In
to
no
work.
uncertain terms.
But she saw the product, she believed in the product, and she pushed and pushed and pushed. Now, in that 5-year process, did you have any? Hi.
I saw the product. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which product?
And relieve me.
Pinups.
Okay, so what I actually said.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I wasn't quoting.
I know.
Oh, should we
I'm
turn
just letting
that?
you know.
Can we turn it towards you?
No.
Let me turn it towards you.
Please don't.
Well, you're in the corner there. You're just
too
see?
bad. Okay.
you're looking around the corner there.
Can you see me? Because I'm putting away stock, so I'm hot and sweaty.
Okay.
But what I actually said, Keith, when you brought the emerald evening back to my office, was, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen you paint.
Yeah.
And that's what lit my fire to be able to go, okay, it's a whole new genre, let's go learn it.
Yep. There
So,
we go.
but that's been Jean ever since I've known her. When she first saw the Lord of the Rings art, she fell in love with the art, and she was in sales. I mean, she was the first woman in the country to sell Porsche, the very first woman in this country to be a Porsche saleswoman. And the reason that she could sell them is because she loved the product, and that's her statement. If she loves something, she can sell it. If she doesn't, she can't sell it, or won't sell it. Let's put it that way, or both ways.
So I'm going to address some comments here. Jay Davies says, love seeing the behind-the-scenes perspective on art. Thanks for sharing. Thank you for
Mhm.
watching. Pinups project such a warmth. They distill a snapshot of America in the 20th century to him. Like other adult mediums, they don't come off as raw or explicit. They have atmosphere.
Yep, that's what I'm after.
Philip Gorkin said he had the opportunity to be at the opening of that first pinup show in
Oh,
New
really?
York. And it was very cool to see. Awesome.
Yeah, that was very exciting. That was a great day for me. I was really turned on.
Yeah, and then Jay Davis, it seems like Greg is most in love with the rendering technique to painting as opposed to the concept, which I think is what makes him such a prolific artist. He finds thrill in the technical challenge.
Yeah, I do, and that's true. And concepts are important too. I mean, but still, it's ultimately, I love the process of painting, of drawing and painting, but concepts, a concept that really grabs you can knock you over the head and really excite the hell out of you.
Yes, I'm going to make an outsider observation of someone who knows you relatively well.
Yes, you do.
For 99% of commercial jobs, that is absolutely 100% true, because they're not your original concepts.
Mm-hmm.
They are the concept of
other writers,
of the publisher, of the creator, of
writers,
like that.
producers, directors, artists.
Because for the most part, you're engaged in like the cover art,
mm-hmm.
Or a series of individual illustrations for card sets or things of that nature, where you're not getting involved in the story making process
mm-hmm.
or anything like that. However, with your personal works, going back to the Dream Images,
mm-hmm.
this pinup series, all of that, you were very heavily invested in. What story am I telling?
Absolutely.
What is the concept? And even your stuff that nobody has seen, the infinite amount of projects that are on these shelves stacked up of your own storytelling things. You get into the minutia detail
mm-hmm.
of everything.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So, Jay Davies, again, for 99% of the commercial work, that is a 100% accurate
mm-hmm.
observation.
Mm-hmm.
But there's that.
Yeah. But yeah. So.
So, stepping back into the pinup realm. First, I want to ask you. Okay, so I know Emerald Evening was the very first painting, because that's the very first thing I saw
mm-hmm.
coming in. Was that the very first concept that you had, or the idea? That
no,
you
I probably drew. Oh God, I probably drew 100, 200, 300, 500 things. Kept sketching and sketching and sketching and sketching and sketching. And I was looking at a lot of stuff. I went back and looked at a whole bunch of old pulp magazines, not only paintings but photography. Film, books, men's magazines from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and just to try to get a feeling for all of that stuff. And then decided, made the decision, well, I was going to be retro. That is to say, I'm going to set these things back whenever.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't going to try to copy the exact style of that period to make it look like that. If you saw my painting, you'd think that it actually was done in 1954. I didn't want that.
Okay.
I wanted it to look like back then, from the present position of looking back at it, sort of. Like in other words, I'm applying my painterliness or paintology or what the hell ever that I've accumulated, and now I'm doing that subject.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, it's like I'm not trying to be totally persnickety about every little accurate detail about it. I just want the general gist of something. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah.
So it could be then, it could be now, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah. A blending or a blurring of the worlds.
Right. And it wasn't. I wasn't trying to be like exaggerate. I mean, you see a lot of retro pinup costumes now that women wear and they design. It's almost like a put on of the 50s.
Yeah.
Not even an accurate take of the 50s. It's more like you're putting it on, you're goofing on it. So
yes. Yeah.
Giant polka dotted dresses and crinoline, makes all that. That was there, but it didn't exactly look like a lot of these things that people think that it may have looked like. They're using their imaginations to go take off with it. And I was doing the same thing, only in my way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that tends to happen like in, on television or wherever, where they, like if they're doing something from the 60s or from the 80s, they dress everybody into these extremes.
Yeah.
Where it's like, that was on MTV in the 80s,
Right.
but you didn't see it down the street,
Right.
Right. In Middle America,
Yeah.
But so one of the crucial steps then that you took, that is I think is important for everybody to get, is that you ultimately did your research before you ever produced a painting. You knew, okay, you were making that switch, making the conscious effort to do the switch, so you dug in doing your research. Now, in your research, I know that you were familiar with Vargas and Elvgren and any of the
Petty and Mozart. She was great. She was one of the female painters of pinup art. She posts her own pictures. I've talked about her before. She did that fantastic painting of Jane Russell in The Outlaw. It's a look it up. She's laying back in the hay. It's great. It's a beautiful painting. But she was a woman, and she painted pinup art.
So I know, okay, you were exposed to them, when you were younger. I'm sure you looked at them throughout your life.
Mm-hmm.
But at this time, doing your research, did you get into them at all, or did you make an effort to stay away from them? What was your approach to the giants of the genre?
Well, yeah, no, I looked at them all. I mean, I was checking them all out, going back and studying them. There was no conscious effort to try to emulate any one of their styles at all. In fact, I was against that. I didn't want to do that. It's the same with Tim and I did Terry and the Pirates. I wouldn't do it if Tribune Media, who owned it, said, imitate Mill Kniff. I would have nothing to do with it. So they just said, no, do your own thing. Make it look like whatever you want to make it look like. Just draw. And so, no, I had no effort to try to copy these guys, women, none at all. I was inspired by them. It's the distinction, there, that you look at them to be inspired. And I wasn't really going to do paintings that of the storytelling that was in any one of the pictures either. Some of them got kind of like, in certain terms, kind of goofy. Yeah. And were sort of like something I wouldn't want to emulate.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but nonetheless, I looked at them for inspiration, and just came up with my own thing.
So inspiration, but yet making a very conscious effort to not do that, but to do this,
and to tell stories. I mean, maybe not all of them tell the but my idea was I'm not just doing pinup art, but I mean I'm coming from an illustration past. I'm coming from a storytelling past. So a lot of the pinup art too, particularly Vargas, was all a figure against white.
Yeah, vignette.
A vignette, right. And I didn't want to do that at all. I wanted to show a whole scene. I wanted to tell a story. And like I think the third one that I laid out was a girl at a window looking through the Venetian blind, and I just with a green light coming from the outside. For me, was about like I wanted to combine a bunch of stuff. She has a gun in her hand. She's peering through the Venetian blind like she's troubled, like something. You don't know, something's about to happen. Something happened. Something's going to happen. But one of the main things about that picture that I first thought of that I wanted to try to pull off was Venetian blinds. Because that's so 50s, that's so 40s. Yeah. Venetian blinds are iconic image. All the Betty Page photos and everything. So I'm going to do something with Venetian blinds. What could that be? Well, let me see. A girl looking, peering through, like something's going on outside. So, but it started with Venetian blinds, and it moved into this whole more sudden danger kind of like detective story cover sort of like look.
The one thing that, from my observation, again, just kind of giving a general, you've done a lot of pinups, over 100. But a lot of what happens in that genre, like you're talking about, there's the vignette, and even when it's moved into the sci-fi fantasy realm, you still get a figure that's kind of imposed on a background. Mm-hmm. I mean, there might be, stuff going on. They might even be riding a creature, but it's clearly about that figure, and everything else is secondary. And a lot of the stuff you were doing with that pinup is they were existing within a scene.
Yeah, exactly. The elements of the scene were as important as the figure, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
It's,
what's that? There was what's the story
Mhm.
going on here, and it just happens to be a pinup.
It happens to be a pinup, and it's a kind of like a scene that you could read into it your own story.
Yeah.
It isn't like that specifically making a point, generally speaking, but you can approach it and I'll say, what's going on? Maybe this, and I get different kinds of stories from people too.
Yeah.
Over the years about what's happening in that scene. I say, well, and they ask me what's happening. I say, well, whatever you want it to happen. That's the way that works.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what I thought.
Yeah. There's the one, the Black Widow painting, where I misconstrued the nightgown all these years. I'm a little disappointed actually that I found out the truth of the painting. But I thought it was a nun's habit that was on nun. So
Well, that's
all
that's
of
a
these,
whole.
all of these
No,
years,
right.
like 20 years, I thought that that's what that was, and that we were seeing something like, something
There's
common
some
or whatever.
common, some wild. No,
Yeah.
not at all. It was
It
just
wasn't that at
it
all.
happened to be a very nice robe that I happened to have. That I think Jean's mother had that robe. That was a robe that Jean's mother had, which is from a period,
Yeah.
And I just loved it. It was black velvet and everything. So that's what that was. It had nothing to do with nuns. None of that. So that's bizarre. I didn't know that.
So in
You got a stranger mind than I do.
Anyway,
whatever.
I was interpreting your mind. So in that that 5 years, you had that show. I think the show came within the first couple years.
The first year. I mean, we went over to
year. Okay.
Lou Meisel's gallery, the
Yeah.
Great American Pinup downtown in Soho, New York City, and he flipped over the painting that he saw, the Emerald Evening. Gene sent it over to him, and he said, oh, he wanted to see more. And I already had about 3 started. I think it was the one I just said with the Venetian blinds. The other one was the hotel.
Yep.
The gals from the back, and there's a hand in the foreground with a
Yep.
cigarette.
Yep.
Now that whole scene to me, it was like I'm here. There's a hand in the foreground holding a cigarette in that picture, and it was my hand. All the hands you see in any of those pinup paintings are mine, but nonetheless, while I'm painting the picture, I'm hearing Humphrey Bogart's voice. That for me was that scene was something from an old Bogart movie. That's what that was all about. Sort of like thing. And I also looked up Edward Hopper, a magnificent. He's one of my favorites. His city stuff, to see if he had done something. I swore that he must have done, the proverbial red hotel sign outside the window when you're inside the room, and you see the red light. And no, he never did. There was no painting like that. I couldn't find one anywhere. It's hit me as such an iconic sort of like picture, but nobody had painted it. So I felt kind of happy over that I could do that. So I did it with this hotel sign. Only I left all you can see is hot, hot L. You see,
Yeah.
so, and that just happened accidentally because I had it outside the window and the way the windows covered it and stuff like that. I didn't even plan that.
One of those happy accidents.
And so that was, and so I did 25 paintings first year, at the end of that first year.
Nice.
So that was the way that worked.
So you mentioned earlier that you had the show and nothing sold.
One painting.
One painting. So,
but that was because of Gene's effort, because it was a friend who bought it.
Yeah. So, but that had to feel a little bit disappointing.
Well, yeah, it did. I mean, it was kind of weird too the way he acted. The gallery owner just left the building when he went. He never was in the gallery with the opening. So he just wasn't there, and I have no idea why. And I was like, where the hell is he? He was gone. So we did the whole show with just our Gene, me, and whatever, and friends, and it was sort of, but there was a couple of good write-ups in some of the art, New York art newspapers.
Yeah.
They gave it a good review, so I thought, well, that's cool, and people liked it, and so I kept at it,
Okay. So yeah, I was going to ask that. Like, was there any time in that 5 years while you're really waiting for it to become financially successful? There's success of the images, of course, but there's the component of this is
Money.
what you do for a job.
We have to make a living here.
Yeah, and
Oh yeah. So there was that reality, and then
yeah.
yeah.
So was there any time where you maybe felt down or got discouraged, or did you just have 100% faith and I know this will work?
I just stayed at it. Just like the
I'm just listening.
well, Gene was the one.
It's funny because you're on camera, so you're
So Jane,
acting like you're hiding.
So
coming in.
can you remember what was it? You remember the show at Mizell's where you were the one that sold the painting, not Mizell,
I did.
and then you were the one that did all the promoting, not Mizell.
I did.
And in that, how long it took for it to really start to sell, and did you ever feel any disappointment at all?
Well, Greg,
Yeah.
that first night I sold a $15,000 painting.
There you go. So she sold
So
a $15,000 painting the first night.
painting on the first night, and
And then-
I said, okay, somebody wants to spend money on these. Let's go find them. That's all.
And so you kept at it, and Gene kept me at it. It's I kept coming. I just kept coming up with concepts and ideas. You draw. I draw like God Almighty. I have mountains of sketches and pinup ideas, and I have tons of photographic sessions. I've got models. We get to a point. Gina and I will go through the sketches, and we'll say, okay, this one, and then we stack up a bunch of them. And then we call models, and then we get the models over, and I shot. I've got a dozen photographed images that are still sitting over there on that shelf waiting
Just
for me to
ready to
paint.
go. Okay.
So one of them, the next will be, Jean will get it off the list. We'll look at them all over again. She'll say, okay, this one, let's do this one. She'll write it on my board over here that she keeps a list of all the stuff that I'm working on.
Mhm.
That'll be next. And it's basically been that way for all this time since the first show. But we've done other work, obviously. I mean, what the hell was all the other stuff I was doing? Yeah, what was all the other what were all the other people we were doing jobs for all through the pinup since the pinups?
You were doing a lot of magic
Ma-
stuff.
Magic, right?
Like a zillion things. I don't
A zillion things.
Harry Potter
Yeah.
cards, Magic the Gathering cards, Marvel, a lot of covers for Marvel Comics,
Even
private commissions.
revisiting the Tolkien stuff from those books.
Yep.
Um,
Yep, and each thing you get into it. I mean, like we're making the transitions. I can do that daily. I can go over my drawing board over there and sit there in the morning and draw certain subjects, and come over here and paint something completely different. And I enjoy that.
Yeah.
I like the jumping around aspect of it. It's like it keeps your brain operating for one thing.
Yeah.
And I just like the differences of things. That's exciting to me. I just don't want to just do one thing.
Another key component that I want to point out is your attitude is everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
And it's like you got excited about an idea, showed that idea to the person that you trust more than anyone else on the
Mm-hmm.
planet, and they believed in the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so, even though it took 5 years, you just plugged away because eventually you knew it would pay off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And I had various people asking me, "Do you going to quit on this? Do you think that, that it's not working?" I said, "No, hell no, man. I'm other artists,
Yeah.
Not to mention names, and
It's all about persistence.
yeah, Gene said it's never easy. It's all about persistence. But remember the League of Their Own, the female baseball team. It's like one of them was whining about how hard
Yeah.
it is, and the coach
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks says, "Hard is what makes it good." If it comes easy, I always found it to be true. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
like to really work at something. To try. Well, that means you're pushing yourself. That means you're pushing yourself. That's
Yeah.
why it's hard, because you're pushing yourself. You can lay back and just try to get away with something.
Yeah.
Nah, you keep pushing yourself into the white space, into the unknown territory.
Yeah. So that's a
It's about exploration to me too. Like I always feel like you're as an artist, I'm an explorer. I like to know. Explorers explore. Explorers really don't want to know what's around the next bend until they get there, because it's a discovery. Oh, look what I found.
Yeah.
If you know it ahead of time, or No, it's the effort to get there, and you find it, and look what I found.
Sorry, that made me think of a completely sidetrack that we'll talk about later with explorers and not knowing what's there.
Okay.
Discover it, kill them all. So, sorry, I digress.
Any questions?
Yeah, yeah. If anybody has any questions, comments, or whatever, please feel free to chime in, ask away. So, just as a recap for the people watching and are interested in learning how to navigate, your genres of having quality work. When you go to make the move, have quality work.
Right.
Have people that believe in you and support you, and they will help make the connections to get there.
Yep.
And even though sometimes things are hard and take a long time, keep plugging.
Keep on
away.
the path. You just stay on the path. Don't get off the path.
Yeah, and What's great to me is that at that time it wasn't like, okay, well, it's taking so long, so maybe I need to change up something. Maybe I need to change up the look, or I need to do this. You didn't do that. You just kept
at
going.
It. Kept at it.
You knew you were onto it.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a matter of time.
Yep. And like I say again, I've got a dozen of photographs that I can't wait to get to. I'm pretty sure I know the first one I want to do, and so it's sitting over there waiting for me, and that's the fun of it. And in the meantime, I'm doing a bunch of other stuff.
Yep.
At the same time, I'm excited about all the other things I'm doing.
And let's talk about then, your next transition. Someone just made a comment. Is there a genre you guys want to see more of in the art world? That's a good question.
Yeah. A genre in the art world. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't have a ready answer for that. It's not something that jumped on the top of my head. Is there you? Being an artist?
I've never really.
That's a good question. We can dwell on that. Maybe we can answer it next week.
Yeah. I think I would like to see children's book art be taken a little bit more seriously. I mean, you have a few of the masters that get the recognition, but not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a genre that I'm fond of. You've worked in quite a bit, but like you said earlier, it has that stigma of being for children.
Right, and in contemporary terms, I haven't done it for a long time, but when I was doing it back in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, there was that aspect of it to make it look like flat art. If you rendered something, they put you down. And to me, for me, children's book art was going back to the children's book that I had as a kid, that I grew up on, that my mother had. I'm talking about artists like Arthur Rackham, Edmund Dulac. I mean, Eleanor Abbott. My God, you should see her stuff. Magnificent, beautiful. Holy shit, beautifully designed. These were people were producing art on the same level as so-called gallery painters.
Yeah.
So that to me was it. If you come back to that level, yes.
Yeah.
Come back to that level.
Someone else. Carrie Sue just says you have more quality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's one of the paintings in that series that was done, and this was model here, Stacy, and who came to the lake here. This is a shot. I live on the lake, Gene. I live on the lake here, and this was at a friend's house, and he happened to have a gathering over there with people with their boats that came over, these old Chris Crafts and wooden boats, and we just sort of improvised the shoot. I didn't know that was going to happen, so we just got her out there, and I started taking photographs, and that's what I ended up with here.
So to move out of the pinup genre, your next big overarching thematic body of work was then for the Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Yep, a nice big shift.
A nice big shift from pinup to Christmas.
To Christmas.
Right.
Not
just Christmas, but
rock and roll, heavy metal, progressive rock,
yeah.
Christmas. whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It's rock. Paul's term finally, rock theater, is
Yep.
what he was really moving towards. A whole seven, not rock opera. He got it. Yes, but he morphed it into rock theater. That's what he was after.
Okay.
And
that makes sense. You can see that.
yeah, and when and so that's another great big shift, and I love doing that. And that starts off too in a way that you don't expect. I mean, I wasn't looking for it. And then I go the way a lot of this stuff. This pinup thing was just a conscious effort. I want to do pinup art. That came like from wherever that trap door opens and it fell out of my subconscious somewhere. And I said, "Oh, that's it. I want to do pinup art." But the TSO connection was completely, I don't know, very wild. It was really interesting because Gene and I were upstairs wrapping Christmas presents. Want that story?
Yep.
We were wrapping Christmas presents, and as we wrap Christmas presents, we usually play Christmas music, right? And so we'll put them on the disc player, and I'm playing all the stuff, what the hell ever, Marla Alonza, Frank Sinatra, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, all kinds of stuff, you name it. And then behind the disc player, I'm looking down there at the disc, and it's in shrink wrap. I pull this thing up, and it says Trans-Siberian Orchestra. It's a Christmas cover. It's the Christmas tree on it with a little kid. I said, "What the hell is this?" And I didn't even know what it was. So I opened it up, and we said, "To Gene, you want to play this?" She said, "Yeah, let's go back to Sinatra. No, let's play this." So I put it on, and it knocked both of us out. I mean, you have this rock sound moving into traditional orchestration, the Christmas music and other kinds of traditional sounding music and chorus and rock. And it was fantastic. You could see there's some storyline. I didn't read it yet. And then we come to the album, we play it again. I think we wrap presents three times over, just playing the album 3 times. And then I had a studio that I was with other people, other artists, and I brought it in. I said, "You guys are going to hear the best damn Christmas album ever." I put it on, and one of my friends said, "Oh, I've heard of them. A buddy of mine just saw them at the Beacon Theater in Manhattan." And I said, "Really?" He said, he got a hold of them, put them on the speakerphone, and this guy started saying, "Well, you got to see them live. It's lasers and pyro, and their light show is fantastic, and blah, blah, blah." I said, "Incredible." He said, "Oh, did you ever hear their rock album, Beethoven's Last Night?" And I said, "What's that?" "It was an album they recorded." And I said, "Oh my God," because I'm a Beethoven fan. I've been a Beethoven fan since I was a kid. I like classical music, and I like rock and roll. And so I went out and got the album the next day, the disc, and played it, and it knocked me on my ass. It just totally took me over. And I did something unique to the way Gene and I have always worked. I kind of was playing it. She'd go up to bed, and I'd stay down here working, and I'd play the album, and I started drawing sketches on it, completely with no idea that I'm doing a job.
Yeah.
I was just completely obsessed and compelled to do these sketches. Because I kept playing at the album down here on my drawing board. And then I started doing color renderings. I started doing colored pencil and watercolor renderings. And I ended up, literally for 2 months or so, I did this. And I ended up with a stack of art like that. And I came out of my stupor, kind of like literally is what it was. And I showed the stuff to Jean. She says, what is this? I said, "Well, this is what it is. It was the music." She played it. And she looked at the art, and she said, "Oh my God." And I said, then suddenly I get practical minded. I say, "Do you think we should do something with it?" And she said, "Well, who is it?" I didn't even look to see who did the album. I was just I looked, I said, Paul O'Neill. So she made a few phone calls and got a number in New York City at a recording studio. And she gave it to, and I said, "Well, you're going to call him?" And she said, No, this is a fanboy thing. You call. And I said, "You're right, it is a fanboy thing." So she gave me the number, and I called the studio, and this guy comes on the phone, and I asked for Paul O'Neill. He said, "Well, he's not here today." I said, "This is Greg Hildebrandt," and he said, "Give me your number." I gave my number. The next day in my studio, because I was outside the house, I had a studio outside the house back then, and the phone rang, and this voice comes on and said, "Is Greg Hildebrandt there?" And I said, "This is him." He said, "This is Paul O'Neill." "I can't believe you called me." I said, What do you mean? He said, I've been a fan of your work since The Lord of the Rings back in the 70s. So we'd start this whole, you're the man, or you're the man, or you're the man kind of like thing on the phone. And I'm going nuts over his work, over his music. He's going nuts over my artwork. And so he said, would you ever come into the city? I said, yeah, we come in. He said, well let's get together. And I tell Gene, and then they make the arrangement, to meet at one of the only three restaurants that Paul ever ate out of the city. You talk about getting his act now. You ate at 3 restaurants, and you see this one happened to be a Chinese restaurant. And we went in and met him there, and there was Paul in his black leather motorcycle jacket, and his black jeans, and his black riding boots, and his chain hanging out, and his long hair, and he was like a hyper nice guy, fantastic, and he's taking all the art out in this Chinese restaurant, and he's setting it up all on the walls. The waiters are all helping him set up all the artwork all around the place, and he's going crazy over it, and we're going on, and he said, well, would you like to do something? I said, absolutely. So he said, what? And I said, maybe the cover for the program, their Christmas program. And so that's how it started.
That's fantastic.
That's I've been now, what is it, 18 years?
18
years.
Yeah. And I mean, we're running to the end of the time, and I think we would be remiss though if we didn't mention the Kid Stuff series that you had been involved in, like photorealism back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And then moving back into that. So stories for another day.
I think we can talk a little more about TSO, but just to hold this, I still have the very first painting from the very first program. It was like it's a two paneled painting that wraps around the program. That's the very first painting that I did for Paul, and we talked the concept out with him. He talked about he wanted a toy store window, and then we discussed it, and I started picking out the kind of toys, and he wanted this snow globe with their logo guitar in the snow globe, and he wanted this hand reaching towards it. This hand was the hand of this angel in the story, Christmas Eve and Other Stories. And so the other elements in there, I more or less start to assemble and put together. And then I did the painting. And Paul bought every single painting that I did, he wanted us to keep this one to make sure that we always had it, in our home, and could just he wanted us to have it. That's the first painting I did. So, but the whole photorealism thing of my kid stuff, I collect toys and and puppets and things of that nature, and I've been painting their pictures, and that's a whole another story.
Yeah, there's so much to tell, even like with TSO. There's almost multiple genres within.
Yeah, well, that's a big subject.
Yeah,
and the way that each image came into being, the discussions between Paul, his manager Adam, Gene, and myself, generally would be the 4 of us discussing it, and somebody would start the idea off. A lot of them were started by Gene. She would trigger off a concept. As we got further and further along, we started to know each other as time went by, but the whole effort for me was always, and Gene, and Adam, was always to get out of Paul what's in his head. He was the genius. He was the creator of this orchestra. It was his baby. It was his philosophy that emanated and affected everybody in the band, in the whole operation. His way of thinking and his thought process. And that's what I was always after, and I still am, even though Paul's been dead for several years. Our effort is still what would Paul want? What would Paul want to see?
Yeah.
And that's always there. So.
All right, so we're going to address a couple more things, and then we've got to go because
it's time.
It's time to go do ad work.
Time to do admin.
But
Keith is doing
so Chris Fab says, he personally wants to see painted illustration album covers like back in the day. Well,
I'm all for it, man.
Yeah,
1,000%.
The only musical genre, to my knowledge, that still uses painted covers is heavy metal.
Yeah.
and maybe progressive rock, progressive metal.
Yeah.
They still use it across the board.
Yeah, there you go. They're
And,
they're the smart ones.
And that's the stuff. I mean, I'm a metalhead.
Yep.
So I've always been attracted to that album cover art, which I think that's the first piece of your work I ever became familiar with Mob Rules.
Mob Rules.
Bat
Out of Hell. How about the Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell album cover?
That's great.
Isn't that incredible?
It is
Fantastic, man.
You know, I mean, obviously.
And then who was it? Who was it? Molly Hatchet that used Rosetta?
Yeah. I mean, so many great things. Like a lot of the guy named Barry Jackson did a lot of the Ronnie James Dio stuff.
Well, it's the same with movie posters too, right? I mean, it's all freaking everything's digital composites. And I'm not going to knock the idiom, but I'm just saying, where the hell is the paintings? I mean, where are the paintings, for Christ's sake?
Yeah, Photoshop came about, and then it just, I don't.
Why is that? Because somebody once said, who the hell was it? Said that a painted movie poster makes the movie look old. I heard somebody say,
an idiot.
A painted poster will make the movie look old. Okay. Like if it's not painted, it won't look old. What the fuck kind of, excuse my English, but it's like,
well, the thing you got to say is like, Drew Struzan, I'm assuming he's still doing.
No, he's not painting any posters right now. No, he's more or less retired.
Oh,
but my God, he was incredible.
His stuff, when it was up against all the other photographic stuff, it really stood out.
Oh my God, incredibly so. Bob Peak.
Yeah.
God, good grief, man.
Richard get us on a whole different.
It's like, now look at the beauty of that art, and then they stick all these photo composites together, and it just doesn't have it.
Yep.
And I'm not against photography. Don't take me wrong.
Yeah. And Jay Davies said he liked more historical illustration, like Jean Leon. I'm gonna butcher that last name, Jerome.
Jerome. Oh God, yes. Well, yeah, all the whole Academy stuff that was derided for a long, long, long time by the English and French academies. I mean, Waterhouse. Holy shit. The Pre-Raphaelites. Oh my God, Alma Tadema. Oh my, they were freaking incredible, man. Amazing. Yeah. Well, there's a whole group of people that emulate them now. There are painters that all emulate them. That was fantastic. But see, they all got, once the Impressionists, and I always got to make the point of it, not the term of the so-called Impressionists, because they weren't trying to paint impressions. They were trying to get what they saw right in front of them in terms of color and light and composition. But that started, and that knocks out the Academy.
Yeah.
It was a war between, and I get it. That's a whole interesting period, that battle between the Academy paint. The Academy became so goddamn restrictive that they had a list of expressions that you could use in your paintings. This showed happiness. This showed this. This showed this. And you had to use all these poses. And so it became almost like the code in Hollywood, the can't do's of how the hell do you make a movie,
Yeah.
All that. Anyway, that's a whole interesting period. So as much as I loved the great Academy painters, there were a lot of people like in all genres that weren't all that great, but the great ones, they're fucking incredible. And the so-called Impressionists, I love their work too. And it's so good that we're back in time now that we don't have to join camps. We can look at both sides and see the beauty of it. But the so-called these people, the Jerome that you mentioned and the others, got knocked out of the picture. You could have bought a Waterhouse or a Jerome or any one of those guys for $1.50. Nobody wanted them. They rolled them up and stuck them in their attics. It was like weird as hell. And Alan Funt was the one, though. He bought a bunch of Alma Tadema paintings. He was buying them up. He was candid camera for those people that don't look him up. He had a whole huge collection of this stuff. But that's a whole other. But I digress. Right. Art history is very interesting. You get into all these battles and wars and the ups and the downs of it, And I think it's best to zoom back and kind of like look at the best of the best and just take out of it what you like, and be inspired by it all,
Yep. Doesn't have to be the binary.
No, that's for the stupid. That's the stupid to say that there's this or there's that and there's nothing else.
All right, folks. So just to remind you one more time, this is the end of the TSO sale. We have, again, prints, lithographs, clothing is 50% off. Clothing is the only thing that's not marked on the website, but the discount will be processed manually. Old programs, things like that, that are beautiful collections in and of themselves. I mean, Gene has done a phenomenal job designing the program over the years.
Yeah.
So if you missed one for 1 year, you like to see all that stuff and all the art, really, everything comes signed by Greg. So today's the last day of it.
Okay.
And we thank you if you like what we're doing, if you like listening to Greg and all of his stories and the richness of his life. Please hit the like button, the subscribe button, leave your comments, share it around with your friends and everyone else. Thank you for all the feedback that has been coming through. We truly appreciate it. And so everybody have a great night. And we'll see you next week.
Next week.
All right. Good night,
So
everyone.
long.